On November 20, 1851, a British naval ship expedition party consisting of Consul Beecroft from Fernando Po, Commander Wilmot, Commander Gardner, and Lieutenant Beatty arrived at the Oba Kosoko's palace in an attempt to seek a British Lagos friendship dependent on Kosoko's renunciation of the slave trade. Oba Kosoko, through Oshodi Tapa, rejected the friendship offer, and the British delegation departed the Oba's palace. Consul Beecroft then wrote Commander Forbes, the senior officer on the Bight of Benin Division, that it was time for the British Navy to expel Kosoko and install Akitoye, the rightful heir. The reduction of Lagos, or bombardment of Lagos, involved the British Navy's attacks on Lagos in the fourth quarter of 1851 under the pretext of abolishing the transatlantic slave trade. There were many of intersecting interests, including British empire building, British missionary motivations, British mercantile motivations, a deposed monarch's motivations, King Akitoye, and Saro, freed slaves from Sierra Leone, recaptive motivations, provided Whitehall with the necessary impetus for military action against the sovereign of Lagos, Oba Kosoko. The treaty between Great Britain and Lagos had intervention implications. With Akitoye installed as Oba of Lagos, a new treaty between Lagos and Great Britain was signed on January 1, 1852, abolishing the slave trade and ushering what some historians refer to as the consular period in Lagos history. This consular period set the stage for Britain's annexation of Lagos a decade later in August 1861. The treaty between Norman B. Bedingfield, commander of the Majesty's ship Prometheus, and senior officer of the Bights Division, and William McCoskrie, Esquire, Her Britannic Majesty's acting consul, on the part of Her Majesty the Queen of Great Britain, and Dosimu, King of Lagos, on the part of himself and chiefs. Article 1 of the treaty, executed on 6 August 1861, stated, in order that the Queen of England may be better enabled to assist, defend and protect the inhabitants of Lagos, and to put an end to the slave trade in this and the neighboring counties, and to prevent the destructive wars so frequently undertaken by Dahomey and others for the capture of the slaves, I, Dosimu, so with the consent and advice of my council, give transfer, and by these present, grant and confirm unto the Queen of Great Britain, her heirs and successors forever, the ports and island of Lagos, with all the rights, profits, territories, and appurtenances whatsoever thereunto belonging, and as well as the profits and revenues, as the direct, full, and absolute dominion and sovereignty of the said port, island, and premises, with all royalties thereof, freely, fully, and entirely, absolutely. I do also covenant and grant that the quiet and peaceable possession thereof shall with all possible speed be freely and effectually delivered to the Queen of Great Britain, or such persons as Her Majesty shall thereunto appoint for her use in the performance of this grant. The inhabitants of the said island and territories, as the Queen's subject and under her sovereignty, crown, jurisdiction, and government, being still suffered to live there. Article 2 of the treaty provided that King Dosimu will be allowed the use of the title of King in its usual African signification, and will be permitted to decide disputes between natives of Lagos with their consent, subject to appeal to British laws. The Treaty of Cession, in its Article 3 dealing with transfer of lands, make provision to the effect that the stamp of Dosimu affixed to the document will be proof that there are no other native claims upon it, and for this purpose he will be permitted to use it as hitherto, in consideration of the cession as being mentioned of the port and island and territories of Lagos, The representatives of the Queen of Great Britain do promise, subject to the approval of Her Majesty, that Dosunmu shall receive an annual pension from the Queen of Great Britain equal to the net revenue hitherto annually received by him. Such pension to be paid at such periods and in such mode as may hereafter be determined. Between November 1884 and 1885, key emperors of Europe, led by Otto Bismarck of Germany and King Leopold of Belgium, among others, met in the now inglorious Berlin Conference for the scramble and partition of Africa. This now infamous Berlin Conference had neither the African peoples nor their potentates and or the acephalous societies in attendance. Africa and its territorial resources were simply up for the parcellation and control as they deemed fit. This marked the beginning of imperialism in Africa. The Berlin Conference of 1884-1885 ceded the territory of northern Cameroon to Germany. The duration of German occupation was, however, brief, lasting only from 1885 to 1916. Germany lost the territory following her defeat in the First World War, which ended in 1918. German and Belgian troops were decisively defeated in the Cameroon territory by combined forces of the British and the French. Pursuant to Article 19 of the Treaty of Peace, signed in 1919 between Germany on the one hand and the principal allies and associated powers on the other, Germany renounced in favor of the principal allies and associated powers all her rights over her overseas possessions, including the German, northern and southern Cameroons. Germany also surrendered Togoland and Namibia to these powers. Belgium completely surrendered all her territories in the Congo Basin, namely Republic of Congo, Congo Democratic Republic, Burundi, and Rwanda. The British Cameroons existed from 1922 to 1961 with its own flag, coat of arms, and anthem, God Save the Queen, with its status as Mandate Territory of the United Kingdom. The League of Nations Council, under its 1920 covenant, mandated the previously held German territory of northern and southern Cameroons to France and Great Britain for the purpose of administration on behalf of the League of Nations with effect from 1922. The Cameroon territory, as it was then styled, was partitioned between the British and the French under the supervision of the League of Nations. The capital of the Mandate territory was Buea, and the common languages as English, official, Douata, Oroko, Grassfields, Fula, and Kanuri widely spoken. This situation remained in force until 1938 to 1945, when the Second World War began and ended. The League of Nations was replaced by the United Nations Organization. The balance of power tilted in favor of Great Britain and France as the duo became permanent members of the United Nations Security Council with enormous powers, including veto provision in the United Nations Charter. The mandate system of the League of Nations was replaced by the trusteeship system of the United Nations in 1946. In order to minimize administrative costs and create administrative convenience, the government of Great Britain, by an order in council dated August 2, 1946, had the United Nations Trust Territory of Northern Cameroons administered from but joined legally to the newly created northern region of Nigeria, made by virtue of the Sir Richard's Constitution of 1946, which created the various provinces. Following the end of the Second World War, the establishment of the United Nations Organization, coupled with its Universal Declaration of Human and People's Rights, which threatens the British and other empires, the spate of decolonization struggles intensified. This wind of nationalism that was heralded in Africa became even more forceful with the granting of independent status to India and Pakistan. The United Nations Trust Territory of Northern Cameroons was equally swept by the wave of decolonization. This trust territory of British Northern Cameroon had nothing to do with the French Cameroon, again handed over to France by the same United Nations which later became Republic of Cameroon. Recorded as far back as 1922, when the League of Nations divided Cameroon between Britain and France, France renamed its portion of the territory as Cameroon, and Britain renamed her own British Northern Cameroons and British Southern Cameroons. The two British territories were never and have never been geographically contiguous. Even with the emergence of the United Nations in 1945, the said Cameroon territories were merely reclassified as United Nations Trust territories. The areas in question had nothing to do with the French Cameroons, which is today the Republic of Cameroon. The British Cameroons had its main religions as Christianity, southern area, and Islam in the northern area. In this historical era, its official currency was the British West Africa pound. In this work, it is here presented 6 different maps of the geographical area at 6 different dates, namely 1st January 1901 to 4th November 1911, 4th November 1911 to 4th March 1916, 28th June 1919 to 1st January 1960, 1st January 1960 to 1st June 1961, 1st June to 1st October 1961, and 1st October 1961 to 2nd June 1972. Cameroon was the original name given by the Germans to the geographical area they claimed as a protectorate during the scramble for Africa at the end of the 19th century. From 1901 to 1972, the territory was variously known by 4 different descriptions, such as 1. German Cameroon, 2. British Cameroons, 3. French Cameroon, and 4. Republic of Cameroon. Furthermore, the Northern Region government in its official gazette declared that, with effect from 1st July 1960, the area of the Northern Trust Territory shall be constituted as a separate province, which will be known as a trusteeship province, and which will be of equal status with the other 12 provinces of the Northern Region until 1st October 1960, after which date the area will be temporarily administered directly by the United Kingdom. The regional government also declares that if in the forthcoming plebiscites the people of the trusteeship territory decide to join the Federation of Nigeria, then they will do so on the terms accepted by all political parties at the London Conference, and the area will be administered as a separate province of the northern Nigeria. It will guarantee the newly established native authorities of Goza, Mubi, Chamba, and Gashaka Mambila their proper status within the framework of the Native Authority Law, and guarantee that there will be in the future no question of any of these native authorities being subordinated to any existing native authorities outside the boundaries of the new province. It will be recalled that as preparations were in top gear for independence in the various colonies controlled by the British and the French in Africa, there had been heightened demands also by the subjects of the trusteeship territories of Northern British Cameroons and Southern British Cameroons for independence. The United Nations on 7th November 1959 conducted a plebiscite in the 2 British territories with 3 options. 1. To join the emerging Federation of Nigeria. 2. To join the French Cameroon, and 3. To remain as an independent state. The plebiscites, like all referendums, required a yes or no answer from the affected peoples. The peoples rejected a union for independence with the Federation of Nigeria or the French Republic of Cameroon. Since it was therefore rejected, a fresh plebiscite was called from February 11 to 12, 1961. The vote was for yes or no answer on whether the subjects of the Northern Cameroons or Southern Cameroons would join the Federation of Nigeria or the Republic of Cameroon. Between 7th November 1959 and 1st June 1961, the territory had a regional quasi-government headed by Sir Percy Wyn Harris as governor, with its regional capital at Mubi in present-day Adamawa State. Every effort was made by the Federation of Nigeria, particularly the Northern Nigeria Regional Government, led by Sir Ahmadu Bello, to convince the people of the territory to change their 1959 referendum verdict. The United Nations, whose responsibility it was to supervise the preparation of the Trust Territory towards self-government or independence, as provided by Article 76B of the United Nations Charter, was fully involved in all the negotiations that took place prior to the plebiscite of the 11 to 12 February 1961. The February 1961 plebiscite resulted in victory in favor of independence in union with the Federation of Nigeria, which had become independent on October 1st, 1960. The vote rejected independence in union with Cameroon Republic, which became independent as from 1st January 1960. On February 11, 1961, subjects of British Northern Cameroon, which had been administered by Great Britain under the supervision of the United Nations, voted to join the newly independent Federation of Nigeria. The British Southern Cameroons voted to join the former French colony, now Republic of Cameroon, which gained independence in January 1960. So legally, under international law, British Northern Cameroon never existed at any point in history as a separate independent sovereign state, nor was it part of the newly independent Republic of Cameroon, and therefore had no citizens. It must be noted that the 1960 Independent Constitution of the Federation of Nigeria came into force on October 1, 1960. The 1963 Republican Constitution adopted the name Federal Republic of Nigeria with effect from 1st October 1963 and had four important constituent component territories, namely the region of Northern Nigeria, including the Trust Territory of Northern Cameroons, the Western region of Nigeria, the Eastern region of Nigeria, and the Midwest region. Section 3 of the 1963 Republican Constitution provided for the territories of the Federation. There shall be four regions, that is to say, Northern Nigeria, Eastern Nigeria, Western Nigeria, and Midwestern Nigeria. The regions and the federal territory shall consist of the areas comprised in those territories, respectively, on the 30th day of September 1963. In a well-documented research work by Ibrahim Tuku El Sudi, legal practitioner, former Attorney General of Taraba State, and current chairman of the All Progressive Congress APC in Taraba State, it is a Herculean task to locate the United Nations Trust Territory of Northern Cameroons because they are administratively scattered in the three states of the Federation of Nigeria. The states are Adamawa, Borno, and Taraba states. In Adamawa State, we have about 12 local government areas comprising Fufore, part of, Ganye local government area, Hong local government area, part of, Jadda local government area, Madagali local government area, Maiha local government area, Mayobelwa local government area, Michika local government area, Mubi North local government area, Mubi South local government area, Song local government area, part of, and Tuongo local government area. In Borno State, we have about 5 local government areas: Bama local government, Dikwa local government, Gutunga local government, Gwoza local government, and Kala Balge local government. In Taraba State, we have about 7 local government areas: Ardo Kola local government area, Bali local government area, Gashaka local government area, Kurumi local government area, Sedona local government, and Takum local government part of. The Trust Territory of Northern Cameroon covers an area of about 83,831 square kilometers of land. Based on the 2006 National Population Census, the population of Northern Cameroon's Trust Territory is estimated at over 4,500,000 using the 2.8% population growth rate of Nigeria. It became part of the Federation of Nigeria on the 1st of June 1961, that is, 8 months after Nigeria became independent. As a result of the February 1961 plebiscite, the United Nations General Assembly made a resolution in April, Resolution 1608 of 21 April 1961, divesting Britain of its trusteeship. On 1st June 1961, the United Nations Trust Territory of Northern Cameroon became part of the Federation of Nigeria with the initial name of Sedona Province, a name given to honor the Premier of Northern Nigeria for the role he played in campaigning for the people of the territory to vote in favor for independence with the Federation of Nigeria. According to Professor Anthony Oyechukura's book, Nigeria and the Bakassi Peninsula Question, Revindication and Not Cession to Cameroon, published in 2012, an erudite professor of international law and jurisprudence and a member of the Nigerian legal team to the International Court of Justice, ICJ, during a dispute between Nigeria and Cameroon in the suit brought by the Republic of Cameroon titled Case Concerning Land and Maritime Boundaries between Cameroon and Nigeria, with Equatorial Guinea intervening 1994 to 2002. There are several materials relating to Nigeria-Cameroon bilateral boundary talks spanning the period 1965 to 1994, including materials compiled from border states reports covering Borno, Adamawa, Taraba, Benue, and Cross River states. These materials are summarized as Cameroon-Nigeria bilateral territorial and boundary talks 1965 to 1994. Some of these include Mamfe and Ikom Border Talks 1965, which was the first Nigerian-Cameroon Joint Commission. The meetings at Mamfe, Cameroon and Ikom, Nigeria began the actual marking of the boundary on land, which was interrupted by the Nigeria-Biafra Civil War. There was also the first Yaoundé meeting of August 1970, whereby a declaration by the Nigeria-Cameroon Joint Boundary Commission, empowered by the two governments to carry out boundary delimitation in 3 stages: the delimitation of the maritime boundary, the delimitation of the land boundary as defined in the Anglo-German Protocol signed at Obokun on 12th April 1913, and affirmed by the London Anglo-German Agreement respecting 1. The settlement of frontier between Nigeria and Cameroon from Yola to the sea, and 2. The regulation of navigation on the Cross River and the exchange of letters between the British and German governments on 16th of July 1914. That the delimitation of the maritime boundary be carried out in accordance with boundary marks and posts defined in the Anglo-German London Agreement respecting 1. Settlement of frontier from Yola to the sea. There were also the first Lagos meeting of 15 to 23rd October 1970, followed by another in Yaoundé in March 1971. There were indeed state visits by the heads of state and government of the two countries. In some of the bilateral meetings, the leaders did not quite agree on a number of boundary issues. It will be recalled that under the mandate system of the League of Nations, Northern Cameroons and Southern Cameroons were administered as integral parts of Nigeria. But unlike Southern Cameroon, which was administered as integral part of former Eastern Nigeria, Northern Cameroon was administered as an integral part of Nigeria by being partitioned within the administrative units of Northern Nigeria. Dikwa Emirates formed part of Borno Province. The northern portion of Adamawa, north of Benue River, became District of Yola Emirate. The southern section of Adamawa forms the Grompau and Yebu district, administered as part of Newman Division of Yola. Gashaka, further south, was supervised by the president of Muri province, and Kaka Ntem in extreme south was later transferred back to southern Cameroon. Professor Chikura acknowledged the scholarly role played by Professor Taslim O. Elias, who later became the first African to serve as president of the International Court of Justice, ICJ, at The Hague. Holland, in trying to define the international boundaries of Nigeria in expressing his legal opinion, especially on the eastern flank. Indeed, Nigeria's first Prime Minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, on August 20, 1960, on the floor of the House of Representatives said, "On the problem of boundaries, our view is that although in the past some of these were created artificially by the European powers, which even went so far as to split some communities into 3 parts, each administered by a different colonial power. Nevertheless, those boundaries should be respected and in the interest of peace must remain the recognized boundaries until such a time as the people concerned decided of their own free will to merge into one unit. We shall discourage any attempts to influence such communities by force or through undue pressure to change, since such interference could only result in unrest and in harm to the overall plan for the future of this great continent." Who is a citizen of Nigeria? The Republican Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1963, devoted its entire Chapter 2 to citizenship. Section 7 deals with the issue of persons who became citizens on 1st of October 1960. Section 10 dealt with special provisions as to Northern Cameroons, and Section 17 dealt with interpretations of Chapter 2, Section 10 of that Constitution, accorded citizenship of Nigeria by birth to former subjects of Northern Cameroon who became Nigerian citizens by virtue of the referendum of February 11 to 12, 1961. The 1979 and 1999 constitutions of the Federal Republic of Nigeria made provisions for the persons who are Nigerian citizens or who seek to become Nigerian citizens. Indeed, Section 309, Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, saves the various provisions in the previous constitutions of Nigeria: Sir Richard's Constitution, 1946, the Macpherson's Constitution, 1951, Littleton's Constitution, 1954, the Independence Constitution, 1960, the Republican Constitution, 1963, and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1979. The omnibus provisions of Section 309 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, is to the effect that, notwithstanding the provisions of Chapter 3 of this Constitution, but subject to Section 2.8 thereof, any person who became a citizen of Nigeria by birth, registration, or naturalization under the provisions of any other constitution shall continue to be citizen of Nigeria under this constitution. The legal, constitutional, and socio-political implications of being declared a non-Nigerian. In the course of the critical role of the mass media to inform, educate, and interpret history as it daily unfolds, there are legal, constitutional, and socio-political implications of a hitherto deemed citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria being declared a non-Nigerian. The implications could involve historical trip through various epochs in the emergence of Nigeria, especially with regards to the Crown Colony of Lagos, which was ceded to the British forever between 1851 and 1865 by King Dosumu under the pretext that it was to end the transatlantic slave trade by virtue of the Treaty of Cession, dated August 6, 1861, signed by the Oba of Lagos, King Dosumu Telake Obaleko. The Crown Colony of Lagos formed part of Great Britain, and its inhabitants were regarded as British citizens until 1st October 1960. Others who belonged to the Southern and Northern Protectorates and later redesignated as Northern Region, Eastern Region, Western Region, and the Trust Territory of Northern Cameroons were officially designated as protected subjects of the British Empire. Until the Independence Constitution of 1960, statutes in the geographical territory of today's Nigeria were titled Laws of the Federation of Nigeria and the Colony of Lagos. These books still dot our libraries and bookshelves today. This means technically that the Colony of Lagos had a different status. That was why it became one of the knotty issues at the 1958 London Constitutional Conference, where the then three leading political parties in Nigeria, the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, NCNC, later renamed National Council of Nigerian Citizens after the 1961 plebiscite that returned British Southern Cameroons, Anglophone Cameroons, to the French Cameroon, now Republic of Cameroon, the Northern People's Congress, NPC, and the Action Group, AG. While the Action Group argued vociferously for the merger of the Colony of Lagos with the Western Region on the basis of the geographical contiguity, cultural affinity, and historical ancestry, the NPC and NCNC teamed up with the British to argue that Lagos Colony be separated from the Western Region, and this led to the rechristening of the Colony of Lagos as Federal Capital Territory of Lagos in both the 1960 Independence Constitution and the 1963 Republican Constitution. There was nowhere in the Treaty of Cession that authorized Her Majesty's Government of Great Britain to hand over or transfer the Crown Colony to any other power or sovereign state without the consent of the King of Lagos. Nor was the Oba's consent sought in the 1960 Independence Constitution, where the Crown Colony of Lagos was now transferred to the Federation of Nigeria as Federal Capital Territory. By virtue of the 1960 Independence Constitution, which was a product of the London Constitutional Conference at Lancaster House from 1958 to 1959, the colonial territory continued to be known as the Federation of Nigeria, comprising all the provinces of the Northern Region, Eastern Region, Western Region, the British Trust Territory of Northern Cameroons, and the Crown Colony of Lagos. Furthermore, the 1960 Independence Constitution retained the Queen of England as head of state, who exercised the right to appoint a ceremonial Governor-General, including Sir James Robertson, who was succeeded by Right Honourable Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe from October 1, 1960 to September 30th, 1963. Pursuant to the 1963 Republican Constitution, which came into force on October 1st, 1963, Nigeria adopted its new name of Federal Republic of Nigeria, practicing the Westminster parliamentary system of government, with Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe as titular president and Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa as prime minister. The positions were allotted in accordance with the ranking or majority seats held by the political parties in Nigeria's parliament of the time. It will be recalled that there have been kingdoms, emirates, dukedoms, and special areas whose rulers exercise suzerainty outside the geographical territory of Nigeria as constitutionally defined. For instance, Daura Emirates in present-day Katsina State extends to Maradi and Zinda prefectures in the Sovereign Republic of Niger. The Egun people under the Akran of Badagry, the Weno Aholu Menutoi I are found in both Badagry, Nigeria and Benin Republic, and they all speak the same Egun language and pay allegiance to the Akran in Badagry. The people of Yelwa North and South in Ogun State, formerly Egbado North and Egbado South, share consanguineal affinity with the Ketu-speaking people of Benin Republic. The Higi-speaking people who comprise Michika local government area of Adamawa State and of the ancient Sukru Kingdom are spread across Michika and Marwa in Cameroon's republic. The Adamawa Emirate, under the rulership of the Lamido Adamawa with its seat in Yola, Nigeria, has its territory covering the entire Adamawa province of northern Cameroon. Dikwa Emirate in Borno State, Nigeria, stretches far into northern Cameroon and parts of Chad. In parts of Benue and Cross River states, several tribes are evenly distributed along the Nigeria-Cameroon border, and they intermingle freely without restrictions as the territorial boundaries artificially erected by the departing colonial power. If there are persons whose citizenship have been declared to be non-Nigerian, can they leave Nigeria with their geographical territories? How about those communities in Nigeria, such as the indigenous peoples of Biafra, who seek self-determination and are asking for the actualization of the sovereign state of Biafra, as provided for by the United Nations Charter on the Universal Declaration of Human and People's Rights, ratified in 1948? How about the offices occupied, positions attained, decisions taken, and benefits that accrued to persons whose citizenship statuses fall outside Nigeria? Will there be sanctions, reparations, or punishment for them? How about the victims of their decisions, whether appropriate or inappropriate? What about the future and statuses of their descendants and offsprings, whether in Nigeria or outside? What and how will they be described?